I will start reading each sentence and let us see whether we understand. Okay, that's fine. Just 1 second. 125. Yeah. So, just to remind you, he is trying to solve the problem of in the physical level, we are seeing the reality. I keep repeating this because then it must be very solidly in the mind. Okay. And when we go make our mind silent, we are seeing the world is unreal. So, which is the truth? He's trying to find out. So, he's examining all the possibilities. So, he's going one by one and saying that there is a knower, there is the know to be known, and there is also the knowledge which is connecting the two. That means there is a perceiver, the one who is perceiving, and what is perceived is the percept, and there is a process of perception which is the two. So one by one he is examining all this. So first he has examined the percept being real, and he has come to the conclusion by logic, we won't go into the logic part, that yes, the world is real, but not as the materialist sees it. The materialist is seeing the reality, but it's a reality in time and space. It is transient. It comes into being and disappears, but the universe is real. The background in which all the forms are made, that is real. But the forms themselves are half real, half unreal, because they disappear. But the universe never disappears. So this is what he has come to. Then he says, let us now examine the problem of the world being unreal because it's a spiritual experience. And if you can't dismiss that spiritual experience, how is it that we see the in a higher consciousness, I am seeing the physical world as unreal? So then he examines. So who is seeing this unreality? First he examines the Brahman. Is it the Brahman who is seeing the supreme being? Is he seeing the unreality? Then he discusses that no, it cannot be because he is the reality. How can he see unreality? So that is out. Then he says that could it be that there's an imagination in the mind? Then that also he has discussed. Imagination is something which is available to man. It's not available to the animal, nor is it necessary at the higher level because you are seeing the reality and the fullness. Imagination is something which you think about, which is not existing at present. That is imagination, right? So, imagination is not available and not necessary in the Brahman. That also he discards. So, we have a problem. So, that's what up to that point he has come. So, now what should we examine? Should we examine the perception? What is the nature of perception? Okay, that is what he's going to examine. Then finally, after some time, he will discuss also the individual, not the Brahman, but the individual. Is he perceiving the unreality? The discussion is all about unreality. Okay, so one by one he is describing. So now that also he has come to Maya. Okay, whether Maya is the unreal, so that he has discussed. So now I am reading the one sentence each, and then we see whether it's there is so far no satisfying answer to the riddle. And what's the riddle? Is the world real or unreal? Because at different times, both are experiences which are supported. We can't deny the reality of the physical world now, nor can I deny the reality of the physical world in the higher consciousness. So, what is the problem and what is the real truth? There is so far no satisfying answer to the riddle. But it may be that we make a mistake in attributing any kind of reality, however illusory at bottom, to Maya or to her worth. So, is it possible that we are attributing some kind of reality, however illusory at bottom, to Maya or her works? The true solution lies in facing courageously the mystery of its and their utter unreality. So don't dismiss it like the Mayavadins and the Buddhists are saying, oh, the world is unreal, discard it. But saying, no, I will not do that. It's a shallow way of looking at things. Because in the physical world, when I see a reality, it is consistent. Suppose I have a conversation with somebody that conversation is real because we decide certain things and it has consequences over days. Next day also it is there. How can I say it is unreal? If it is unreal, it wouldn't be valid the next day. But it is valid. We decide something and we pursue it. And if we make an attempt, sometimes we go on making an attempt for months and together. So how can it be unreal? So we have to face with great courage, we have to face the problem. That's what he's saying. Okay. The true solution lies in facing courageously the mystery of its means Maya, and there the physical world, utter reality. If you want the words, then however illusory about Maya and her works. What are the works of Maya? The physical world. Okay. So the true solution lies in facing courageously the mystery of its Maya, and there the works, their utter unreal. This absolute unreality seems to be envisaged by certain formulations of illusionism or by certain arguments put forward in its favor. So there are many who say that, yes, the world is illusion. Okay. He's talking of Buddhism and Mayavada. But there are also certain arguments put forward in its favor. The arguments he is referring to Shankara's images, the 6 images that we discussed. Those are the arguments. Okay. The serpent and the robe, then the mirage in the desert, and then the reflection of one moon in troubled waters. You see the many. Then there is also the most famous one is the serpent and the robe, and the mirage in the forest, in the desert, and then the reflection, and also the nacre. Nacre is the slightly silver-looking thing on the shell, but it is actually not silver. So all these images he has. Okay? There are all these images. So that's an argument he is referring to. Okay? So certain arguments put forward in it. This side then of the problem has to pass under consideration before we can examine with confidence the solutions that rest on a relative or partial reality of the universe. So let us examine the Maya. Okay, that's what he's saying. There is indeed a line of reasoning which gets rid of the problem by excluding it. That's what the Mayavadins do, and the Buddhists also are doing. Okay, and what are they saying? The world doesn't exist. Why are you bothering about it? It's not true at all. So they're saying, I can't accept that solution. This side then of the problem has to pass under consideration before we examine with confidence the solutions. Note the word confidence, that rests on a relative or partial reality. He is examining now the total unreality he has discarded. Now with Maya he is saying, could it be partial or relative? There is indeed a line of reasoning which gets rid of the problem by excluding it. It affirms that the question, how the illusion generated, how the universe manages in the pure existence of Brahman, is illegitimate. It is not the proper way of looking at things. Why? Because the problem does not exist. Because the universe is non-existent and Maya is unreal. Therefore, Brahman is the sole truth, alone and self-existent forever. This is the position of Mayavada as well as Buddhism. There is a reality, but that reality is not the world. That's what they are saying. Brahman is not affected by any illusory consciousness. No universe has come into existence within its timeless reality. In its timeless reality, because you are starting with the Advaita philosophy, remember that. Whole argument is taking place on the hypothesis that the Advaita, there is an absolute reality. But when you are in the lower consciousness, you are seeing the unreality, you are seeing the reality. But when you go to the middle level of consciousness, you are seeing the unreality. That's a problem being discussed. Brahman is the sole truth, alone and self-existent forever. Mayavada, as well as the Buddhism, they see this. They admit the reality of the Brahman, but not the world. Brahman is not affected by any illusory consciousness. No universe has come into existence within its timeless reality. How can it? How can there be an unreality in that which is absolutely real? Note the word absolute real. But this evasion of the difficulty is either a sophism, which means nothing, an acrobacy of verbal logic, the logical reason hiding its head in the play of words and ideas and refusing to see to solve a real and baffling difficulty. The word sophism means double speak. Okay. You are saying one thing, but you are meaning something else. There is confusion in the mind. Okay. You are fooling yourself and trying to fool others. So sophism, which means nothing. How can you say that something which is I have been seeing as real is suddenly unreal? You're playing with words. An acrobacy of verbal logic. Okay. The logical reason hiding its head in the play of words. This interesting image is the image of the ostrich. It is supposed to put its head into the soil and it sees nothing. Okay. If I don't see something, it doesn't exist for me. Very easy optimism. That's not the way to look at it. Okay. Which means an acrobacy of verbal logic, the logical reason hiding its head in the play of words and ideas, and refusing to see or to solve a real and baffling difficulty. Or else it means too much, since in effect it gets rid of all relation of Maya to Brahman by affirming her as an independent, absolute non-reality along with the universe created by her. So they are denying even the Maya. There is no Maya also. If a real existence, if a real universe does not exist, a cosmic illusion exists, and we are bound to inquire how it came into being and how it manages to exist. So now the argument is going on. If a real universe does not exist, but a cosmic illusion is there, you experience it. So how does it come into being? Okay. So there is an unreal world, but there is an illusion in it. So how do we solve the problem? We are bound to inquire how it came into being and how it manages to exist. The physical world exists forever. And you are saying it is unreal. It may be unreal, but it is lasting forever. How does it maintain itself? What is its relation or non-relation to the reality? What is meant by our own existence in Maya? By our subjugation to our psyches, by our liberation from it. You are saying on the one hand that it's not there, but you are escaping from something which is unreal and coming into reality. What is the need? If there is no reality in the physical world, then where's the question of liberation and going from one level to another level? So that's why it is illogical to speak in this way. That's what Sarda is pointing out. Bhava liberation from it. For in this view, we have to suppose that Brahman is not the percipient of Maya or her works. Maya herself is not a power of Brahman consciousness. Maya is something independent. Brahman is superconscient, immersed in its own pure being, or is conscious only of its own absoluteness. This is the transcendent consciousness. You can experience that consciousness, the transcendent consciousness. When you enter into that transcendent consciousness, it's a dense light that is aware only of itself. It's a spiritual experience that you can have. Okay, it's a transcendent consciousness. Nothing else except himself. Brahman is not looking outwards. He is only looking into himself. It's like a concentrated light. The light is not going out. Okay? This is what Sridhar is saying. So, immersed in its own pure being, or is conscious only of its absoluteness. It's not conscious of the world. It has nothing to do with Maya. But in that case, if that is the truth, either Maya cannot exist, even as an illusion, or there would be a dual entity or two entities, a real eternal superconscious or conscious only of itself, and an elusive power that creates and is conscious of a false universe. In other words, Brahman can have a double status. We have to imagine because how to explain. So let us suppose, we will suppose that Brahman is not absolutely concentrated in itself. It has got a double power. It's got a double power. What is the double power? It can either concentrate only on itself, or it can take a different stand and look at the physical world and see the unreality. That's the examination of that possibility is now being done. But in that case, either Maya cannot exist, even as an illusion, because in which case, when the divine is only absolute and not semi-absolute, in that case, either Maya cannot exist, even as an illusion, or there would be a dual entity. The Brahman is not absolute, but it's got two stands. We are examining the possibility. Cannot exist even as an illusion, or there will be a dual entity or two entities. Okay? So he's making a distinction. Dual entity means they are connected. Two entities means maybe not even connected. A real eternal superconscious or conscious only of itself, that's the first one, and an elusive power that creates and is conscious of a false universe. Okay? So this is the conclusion that you can come to if there is a dual status. We are back on the horns of a dilemma and with no prospect of getting free from our impalement on it, unless we escape by concluding that since all philosophy is part of Maya, all philosophy also is an illusion. Problems abound, but no conclusion is possible. For we are confronted with a pure, static, and immutable reality and an illusory dynamism. The two absolutely contradictory of each other, with no greater truth beyond them, in which the secret can be found, and their contradictions discover a reconciling issue. So, this, if you think that the only reality is the Brahman, then you have a problem. The world cannot exist. And it cannot be that there's a dual status. Now, that dual status we have to see. We have to examine that possibility of the dual status. And he's using very interesting words, and his language is always, you have to go into each word and see. We are back on the horns of a dilemma. Okay? The horns of a dilemma with no prospect of getting free from our impalement on it. The word impale is very interesting. Suppose you take a very sharp spear and put something on it, it will be impaled. Okay, so that's the word he's using. So we are stuck on that. Unless we escape, then there is another possibility also. He's examining every possibility by concluding that since all philosophy is part of Maya, how are you coming to all these conclusions? By arguments and by logic. But logic belongs to Maya. It belongs to the world. Your all thought belongs to the world. It doesn't belong. There's no thought in the Brahman. So therefore, all your thinking is useless. It doesn't exist. You're just imagining all this. So no conclusion is possible. For what we are confronted with is a pure, static, immutable reality. The transcendent only is real. And an illusory dynamism. The two absolutely contradictory of each other with no greater truth beyond them, in which the secret can be found and their contradiction discover a reconciling issue. So note carefully what he's saying. He's already giving you a hint of how to solve the problem. I'm reading that carefully again. We are confronted with a pure, static, immutable reality. That's a Brahman, the absolute Brahman who is conscious only of himself. And an illusory dynamism. The dynamism is the action, the movement in the physical world, the power. And the two absolutely contradictory of each other with no greater truth beyond them to reconcile them. So in other words, if you are in the spiritual plane of consciousness, higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind, overmind, not the supermind, then you can never solve the problem. That's what he's saying. But if there is a greater truth beyond, that's a supermind, then the problem is solved. And what that solution is, he will tell us. But if you are stuck in the spiritual plane of consciousness, which we call level 2, level 1 is our own ignorant body, mind, life, and level 2 is the spiritual plane of consciousness. Your consciousness has gone out of your body, mind, life. You have a problem which cannot be solved. You have to only come to the conclusion that the Buddhist is absolutely real. His argument is true, and also the Mayavadi is quite justified in saying that. But if you go beyond these two levels and go to a third level, which is saying no greater truth beyond them. So that no greater truth beyond them is the supermind. He has not yet introduced it because he's arguing from the spiritual plane of consciousness. Finally, he will come to the supermind, which reconciles both of them. There's a connection between them. Connection between the world and the Brahman that creates the world. There's a connection. The others are saying no connection. If you want, there is no connection between, let us say, America and India. Okay, there's no ambassador, so there's no communication. You can't even go there. You can't, because you can't represent. There's no representation. But if there's a communication, if you have an ambassador in each country, then there's a communication possible. So you're saying you end up with the, if you are in the spiritual plane of consciousness, level 2, there is no communication and you have to reject the lower or the higher. If you reject the higher, you are a materialist. If you reject the lower, you are a Advaitin or a Buddhist. So that's what is coming. In other words, we have to examine further. So then we come to the next one. If Brahman is not the percipient, so if Brahman is the percipient, all the possibilities is discussed and he has to reject all of them. So now, if Brahman is not the percipient, then who is perceiving? That's the next one. That's an individual man. Okay. So if he is perceiving, what are the options open to us? That's what he's examining. Okay. So I just remind you that Brahman is not the perceiver, but the individual soul is the perceiver. This is the problem that we will be discussing in this para. Okay. So let's read the para. If Brahman is not the percipient. So who will read? Any one of you? Sunki has not read for a long time. Sunki, you'll read?
Yes, I will read.
Go ahead.
Yes.
If Brahman is not the percipient.
Yes. If Brahman is not the percipient, then the percipient must be the individual being. But this percipient is created by the illusion and unreal. The percept, the word, is an illusion created by an illusion and unreal. The perceiving consciousness is itself an illusion and therefore unreal. But this deprives everything of significance of our spiritual existence and our salvation from Maya, no less than our temporal existence and our immersion in Maya. All are of unequal unreality and unimportance. It is possible to take a less rigid standpoint and hold that Brahman, as Brahman, has nothing to do with Maya, is eternally free from all illusion or any commerce with illusion, but Brahman as the individual percipient or as the self of all being here has entered into Maya and can, in the individual, withdraw from it. And this withdrawal is, for the individual, an act of supreme importance. But here, a dual being is imposed on Brahman and a reality attributed to something that belongs to the cosmic illusion, to the individual being of Brahman in Maya. For Brahman, as the self of all, is not even phenomenally bound and does not need to escape from her. Moreover, salvation cannot be of importance if bondage is unreal, and bondage cannot be real unless Maya and her world are real. The absolute unreality of Maya disappears and gives place to a very comprehensive, even if perhaps only a practical and temporal reality. To avoid this conclusion, it may be said that our individuality is unreal. It is Brahman who withdraws from a reflection of itself in the figment of individuality, and its extinction is our release, our salvation. But Brahman, always free, cannot suffer by bondage or profit by salvation, and a reflection, a figment of individuality, is not the thing that can need salvation. A reflection, a figment, a mere image in the deceptive mirror of Maya cannot suffer a real bondage or profit by a real salvation. If it be said that it is a conscious reflection or figment, and therefore can really suffer and enter into the bliss of release, the question arises: whose is the consciousness that so suffers in this fictitious existence? For there can be no real consciousness except that of the one existence. So that once more, there is established a dual consciousness for Brahman, a consciousness or superconscience free from the illusion, and a consciousness subject to the illusion, and we have again substantiated a certain reality of our existence and experience in Maya. For if our being is that of the Brahman, our consciousness something of the consciousness of the Brahman, with whatever qualification, it is to that extent real. And if our being, why not the being of the universe?
Okay, so all this is logic, remember, okay? And the logic is based on there is only one reality and the physical world is unreal. There is no connection between the two. Now, if there's a connection, then the problem disappears. And that's exactly what Srindu is saying. That he is saying, in fact, all his life divine is exactly that. Huh? Constantly he is stressing that matter is Sat, that life here is Chit Shakti, that Ananda is the psychic being, and that supermind is the mind. Constantly he is stressing this, which the others can't say because they don't have the idea of the supermind. So they have a problem and they reject the physical world. And their problem is solved because you don't pay any attention. But Srindu can't do that because he wants even the physical world to change. He has got the idea of the evolution, and therefore he has to suppose that the physical world is real. And if it is real, there has to be a connection, and he has to find the connection between the two. And that connection is found in the supermind alone. The connection. That's whole. He has got 10 chapters on that, establishing the connection of matter with Sat, substance. Both are substance, and there's a gradation between the two. And then there is the Chit Shakti, which becomes life. There is Ananda, which becomes a psychic being, all connected. And the supermind, which becomes the mind. So there's a connection. That solves the problem. But if you say that there is no connection, there is a real problem. But in examining logically one by one, we can eliminate the logic if you want and come to the conclusion for our clarity of mind. But if you can follow the logic, then it becomes very interesting, but it's very difficult, not easy to follow the logic. Okay, so we go back to the beginning of the, so which is the one that we read just now? If Brahman is not the percipient, no? That's the one we have to read.
Yes, please. If Brahman
Yeah.
is not the percipient.
Yeah. So I'll read each. We have got 10 minutes. No, 20. So we've got 15 minutes. So I'll read each sentence and we'll see. So now he goes to the next step. Okay. If Brahman is the percipient, it is impossible because Brahman is real and it cannot see the unreality. He has examined all the possibilities. So if Brahman is not the percipient, who is the percipient? The individual soul. That's what he is examining now. If Brahman is not the percipient, he is not seeing the unreality, then the percipient must be the individual being, the individual soul. But this percipient is created by the illusion and unreal. This is according to the Buddhist Mayavada philosophy. The individual soul is living in the physical world and therefore it is an illusion, part of the illusion. Okay? So you have to discard that possibility also. The percept, the world, is an illusion created by an illusion and unreal. The perceiving consciousness is itself an illusion and therefore unreal. But this deprives everything of significance because there is a question of liberation, which is something so fundamental, And there is a question of liberation. And our salvation, there is suffering. How can you deny the suffering? But you can become free of the suffering. So this simple idea of the world doesn't exist and the individual doesn't exist is an exaggeration. We can't accept that. That's what Srila is saying. But this deprives everything of significance. Our spiritual existence and our salvation from salvation from Maya, no less than our temporal existence and our immersion in Maya. Note, by the way, that this also is a viewpoint. The existentialism says exactly that. The world is very, very unreal, very unjust. There is a lot of perversion and falsehood. But what can you do? There is no solution to it. That's it. The Mayavadan is the opposite solution. There is a solution. There is a Buddhist solution. But the existentialist says there is no solution. You have to suffer all this because it is real. But the Buddhist is saying exactly the opposite. So the materialists and the Buddhists are opposite in their views. Okay. So it deprives everything. There is no meaning to salvation. There is no meaning to liberation. Maya, no less than our temporal existence and our immersion Maya. All are an equal unreality and unimportance. This is according to the Buddhistic philosophy. It is possible, but is that the only way of looking at things? Is it not possible to think of some other thing? Why am I going on insisting that, Srimla is saying, why am I going on insisting that there could be another solution? Because we can't forget that there is a reality. The experience in the physical world is real. How can I deny that? It would be ridiculous. So much of suffering is there. Can you tell yourself that my suffering is unreal? Hardly. So there must be some reality. So let's examine further. So now what's the examination? He's saying it is possible, another argument, to take a less rigid standpoint. What is the rigid standpoint? That there's only one absolute Brahman and nothing else. We have to take a less rigid standpoint and we have to think of something else. And hold that Brahman as Brahman has nothing to do with Maya. This is a rigid standpoint. He is eternally free from all illusion or any commerce with illusion. But Brahman as the individual persistent percipient or as the self of all being here has entered into Maya and can in the individual withdraw from it. And this withdrawal is for the individual an act of supreme importance. So now I'm going to examine, Srindu says, the other possibility that Brahman is not limited to his absoluteness. He has the possibility of entering into the cosmos and also entering into the individual being. And from there he can escape. So that makes a lot of sense. That's what Srindu is going to say. So this is what he is examining now. Okay? So, a less rigid standpoint and hold that Brahman as Brahman has nothing to do with Maya, is eternally free from all illusion. This is the absolute view. But Brahman as the individual percipient or as the self of all being. The individual percipient, the divine is individual. Or as the self of all being, he is also there in the cosmos. So these are the two. You remember, constantly keep in mind the three states of Brahman, according to Srimad. The transcendent, the cosmic, and the individual. So this is what he is examining now. Let us say that Brahman is not absolutely like the Buddhistic view that is only real above. He has the capacity to enter into the universe and also enter into the individual. And from the individual, it is Brahman who is escaping and going to the self and again going to the absolute Brahman. That this is the examination of the possibility. But here, in that case, here a dual being is imposed on Brahman and a reality attributed to something that belongs to the cosmic illusion. So in other words, if you think of that, then the world is not absolutely unreal, but there is some sort of reality, a reality attributed to something that belongs to the cosmic illusion. It's partly unreal, partly real. So the individual being of Brahman in Maya, the Brahman, absolute Brahman, becomes the individual being. Okay? But Brahman as the self of all is not even phenomenally bound and does not need to escape from her. When you go to the cell, there's no need of escaping because you've already escaped. So there are three levels. There is the absolute Brahman, then there is the Brahman in the cosmos, in which he is free. But there is a third one, the individual, in which he binds himself and becomes free. Moreover, salvation cannot be of importance if bondage is unreal, and bondage cannot be real unless Maya and the world are real. So this is the examination of his position that there is an absolute, but that absolute is not limited. He can come into the universe, but he can also come into the individual. The absolute unreality of Maya disappears and gives place to a very comprehensive, even if perhaps only a practical and temporal reality. So, when I'm saying that the physical world is real, I have to admit that it's a temporal reality. That's the thing. There's a solution that Sri Aurobindo offers. To avoid this conclusion, it may be said that our individuality is unreal. It is Brahman who withdraws from a reflection of itself in the figment of individuality, and its extinction is our release, our salvation. So, another possibility is there, and there is a Shankaran philosophy. The individual being is not a reality. He is a reflection in the mirror. This is what is being. So, to avoid the conclusion of Sri Aurobindo that Brahman is capable of limiting himself, the others don't admit that, so they have to find a solution. So what is the solution? To avoid this conclusion, it may be said that our individuality is unreal. There is a truth to that in this sense that the ego is unreal, but not the individuality. Okay? There is a confusion in the Buddhistic and Mayavadi philosophy. They equate the individual with the ego. The ego really disappears. The ego is non-existent, but the individual is real. It is Brahman who withdraws from a reflection of itself. The individual soul is not the reality, but it's only a reflection of itself. And the figment of individuality and its extinction is our release. So you are escaping from an image. You are thinking that you are the image and you escape from it. This is the Buddhistic solution. But Brahman, always free, cannot suffer by bondage or profit by salvation. And a reflection, a figment of individuality, is not a thing that can need salvation. So Sri Aurobindo rejects that also. A reflection, a figment, a mere image in the deceptive mirror of Maya cannot suffer a real bondage or profit by a real salvation. If it be said that it is a conscious reflection, now he is arguing, counter-arguing, countering arguing. So Shankara is saying, wait. You are saying that Brahman has got two levels? Okay. But that second level is an illusion. It is partly real because it's a reflection. But now Sri Aurobindo says, but that reflection cannot be real suffering and real salvation. So now Shankara is giving another argument. Okay? He's saying that it's a conscious image. There's a consciousness in the image. Okay? So that's a reflection, a figment, a mere image in the. Now the counter argument. If it can be said that it's a conscious reflection, it's not an unconscious reflection, but a conscious reflection. In other words, my reflection in the mirror is conscious of itself. That's it. So this is the argument given. So you have to examine the argument, all the logic. The reflection in mere image in the, it cannot suffer a real bondage. Sri Aurobindo's answer. Okay? Even if it's a conscious image, how can it suffer a real bondage or profit by a real self? So if it be said that a conscious reflection or figment, if it be said that a conscious reflection of figment and therefore can really suffer and enter into the bliss of release, the question arises, whose is the consciousness that so suffers in this fictitious existence? For there can be no real consciousness except that of the one existence. So that once more there is established a dual consciousness of Brahman, a consciousness or superconscious free from illusion and a consciousness subject to the illusion. And we have again substantiated a certain reality for our existence and experience in Maya. For if our being is that of the Brahman, our consciousness, something of the consciousness of Brahman, with whatever qualification, it is to that extent real. And if our being, why not the being of the universe? So, the solution suggested in this paragraph is Brahman's absoluteness I deny. I say that the Brahman is capable of binding himself, and there's a gradation. He binds himself at various levels, and in the physical world, he binds himself fully. That's the capacity of the Brahman. Don't think like the Buddhists and the Mahavadins that the Brahman is incapable of binding himself. If you say that, you are limiting the divine, and your conception of Brahman is not what I can agree to. That's what Sridhar is saying. He can bind himself down, and in matter, he has bound himself fully. Not fully, but 99.999%. Because if he had bound himself fully, there would be no evolution. So there is a possibility, but this is what. So you come back to the idea of the play of consciousness, the Leela. It's a play. So this is what he's saying. We have come to the end of the. We have read 2 chapters today. So he's examining one by one. So our solution, what we are interested in, because we believe what Sridhar is saying, the others who don't believe have to follow the logic. But those who believe, there is no problem. The divine is not limited only to omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. He can, if he wants, bind himself down and become absolutely limited. He can plunge into the darkness and submit himself to the sufferings and the darkness and the perversities of the lower hemisphere. But why is he doing that? It's a play. It's a game he's playing with himself. That's the solution. That solution also is very difficult to substantiate, but that's ultimately, that's the real solution. So next we have to read, it may finally be put forward. Okay. So we'll read that next time because we have come to 8:35. Okay. So Sunki, it may finally be put forward. Tomorrow, we'll do this tomorrow.
Mhm.
It may finally be put forward.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay, au revoir everybody.